What's up guys, welcome to another video by Goats on the Road.
In this video, we're just going to tell you guys about a recent trip to Nova Scotia.
If you've been following us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, on the blog, in our email newsletter, you'll know that we recently did a trip with the Nova Scotian Tourism Board where we traveled around the beautiful East Coast province of Nova Scotia in Canada.
Even though we're Canadian, we'd never been over to the East Coast and the Maritime provinces, so it was really exciting for us and it was a completely different part of Canada.
So in this video, we're going to tell you all about the highlights from this 3-week trip through Nova Scotia.
So when we first landed in Halifax, we picked up a rental car and we had that for the whole time during our trip.
But first we spent a few days in Halifax just checking out that coastal city. It's on the second largest natural harbor in the world. There's a beautiful waterfront walking area, like it's pedestrian only. Lots of cool little shops and stands in there, and it's just a beautiful city.
So the first night that we got there, it was actually the Halifax Jazz Festival, so we were lucky enough to be there for that, and one of my favorite artists was playing. It was Common, so we went and saw him and another local artist called Shad, and it was a really great concert.
So after a few nights in Halifax, we took off on our road trip around the province, and we did so much in this trip. I mean, we were moving like every day or two.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that we got up to, and there's gonna be more videos and articles on our blog about that coming up. But for now, we'll just list the highlights. So the first highlight for me has to be Lunenburg. It's a beautiful, beautiful coastal little fishing village with these pastel colored buildings, and we just loved it.
It's actually UNESCO listed as well, and while we were there, we went to a distillery and we went on a walking tour and we just wandered around, ate really good food, and just loved the vibe there.
So after that, we continued on the south shore, driving along the south shore of Nova Scotia, and we went just outside of Lunenburg to a place called Blue Rocks.
Yeah.
This place is super famous because it's got these beautiful blue rocks basically along the ocean, and a lot of people go there and just look at it, but we decided to go on a kayaking trip.
Yeah, so when we got there, the sea was incredibly rough, the Atlantic Ocean, and I was like, we're not going kayaking today. But then our guide picked us up, and actually what you do is you go in the little inlets that's totally protected by these massive blue rocks. So the paddling was really calm, and it was a great day. After doing the south shore of Nova Scotia, we went across to the Acadian area as well, and then we came back to the south shore, and then we cut across the province, and we made our way to Kejimkujik National Park.
This national park is known locally as Keji, and it is a beautiful national park. It covers an area of 381 square kilometers, and there's so many hiking trails. You can do kayaking there as well. You can rent canoes. You can go cycling. So much to do in this park.
So we didn't have like a ton of time, but we did choose one of the trails, and I think it was 5 kilometers long.
Yeah.
And we got to see some old hemlock trees, and it was a beautiful walk, and there was hardly anybody around.
Yeah, part of it was over a boardwalk, and so you weren't damaging the roots of the trees, and some of these trees are like 400 years old, and they're enormous, so it was really cool to see that kind of natural part of Nova Scotia while we were there, and to get into one of these national parks, because there's quite a few in the province.
So after the park, we drove north to another highlight, which was the town of Digby and the nearby whale watching that we did on the Petite Passage and into the Bay of Fundy.
The whale watching was epic. We did see a couple of whales. We saw a humpback that stayed with us for a little while. He was showing us his fluke, showing off a little bit.
Yeah.
And we also saw a finback whale, which is the second largest whale in the world. And apparently they're quite rare to get as close to as we did. Also, in the town of Digby, it was all about the scallops.
Yeah, it's known for having the best scallops in the world. So obviously we went to a restaurant and we had scallop appetizer and scallop main, and we just ate scallops.
Yeah, I love scallops, so Digby, you're definitely on my highlight list.
It was great.
So after there, we travel along the north shore from Digby all the way to a place called Urbania, which is known as the only place in the world where you can do tidal bore rafting.
So basically what happens is the tide in the Bay of Fundy rises so high and so fast, it comes rushing into this river, and then once it meets the end of the river, it has nowhere to go, so it comes all the way back, and it creates these crazy waves. And so what we did is rode a raft over the waves.
I thought it was going to be one massive wave coming in and we were going to surf it all the way in, but it wasn't really like that. Like Dariece said, the waves are crashing together, so you're really just launching off of them in this little raft, and it's a rough ride. It's like a roller coaster ride, but it was really cool to do, and it's definitely something you should do if you're traveling to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, because you can't do it anywhere else.
So next up, after tidal bore rafting, we went to the Annapolis Valley and Wolfville. This is Nova Scotia's wine region, and before we went to this province, we didn't actually know they produced wine.
They mainly produce white wine here, and even though we're not huge white wine drinkers, we still really like the wines, eh?
Yeah, and the tour we did was fun. We went to like 3 different wineries. Our favorite winery for sure was the Luckett Vineyard. So if you go to Wolfville in the Annapolis Valley, don't miss Luckett. It's a beautiful vineyard.
Yep.
We got the opportunity to fly the drone over it, got some beautiful clips, and as you can see, it's just a stunning, stunning area.
The next highlight is definitely Cape Breton Island. So when you leave the mainland, you just cross a 2-kilometer causeway and all of a sudden you're on massive Cape Breton Island.
When you look at a map, it looks like Cape Breton Island takes up like a quarter of all of Nova Scotia, and it does. It's a beautiful, huge island, and a lot of it is covered by the Cape Breton Highlands National Park. There's more trails and hiking opportunities than you can count. There's a few hotels and places to stay, campgrounds within the park, and it's also where you'll find the Cabot Trail, which is easily one of the most beautiful drives in all of North America.
Yeah, this was definitely the outdoorsy part of our trip. So we did a lot of hiking here. We met up with friends and they were camping, so we went to their campsite and had a bonfire and did the typical Canadian summer thing. And like Nick said, the drive was absolutely gorgeous. There's just sheer cliffs, rocky, craggy coastline, overlooking the ocean. It's absolutely beautiful.
And there's plenty of places where you can pull your car off and get out, take photos, look around, even walk along the coast. So Cape Breton Island was just so scenic. It was definitely one of the main highlights that we had during our trip in Nova Scotia. So after a few days, we drove all the way back to Halifax where we finished up the trip.
So those are just a few of the main highlights from our trip. Obviously, there's a lot more things that we did and enjoyed, but those are the main ones that stood out for us. Okay, so we thought we'd just give you guys a few of our best recommendations and tips for your trip to Nova Scotia. So my first tip would be for sure to get your own wheels.
For sure, a motorbike or a car, super useful. You can do what we did and we just picked it up at the airport.
Yeah.
And at the end of the trip, we dropped it off in the same place. But definitely you should just have your own wheels so you can drive around the province and have the freedom to see it how you want to see it. My next recommendation would be all about the food. There's certain dishes you just have to try. This province is famous for being one of the biggest producers of lobster worldwide, so you get some delicious lobster dishes there.
Yeah, we definitely ate our way around the province and we tried basically everything that was put in front of us and we enjoyed every meal that we had. The scallops are recommended in Digby. That's one thing you have to try. If you like lobster, which hopefully you do, there's lobster rolls all around the province. It's like a bun that's stuffed with chunks of lobster and a light mayo herb sauce.
And also just a big old plate of lobster. Just a big lobster on the plate. Usually comes with a side of veg and it is delicious. You dip it in some garlic butter. Oh,
so good.
So good.
And chowders. You have to try the seafood chowders as well. So there's tons of options for food. There's also a lot of little distilleries. There's lots of craft beer and wine and ciders. Many of them are locally made and all the fruit and everything is locally grown. So if you drink alcohol, check those out as well.
Yeah, so basically just try to buy local products because they're so good. There's a lot of little boutique places like Dariece was saying. There's also a lot of farmers markets around the entire province, so you can stop in there. You can get everything from jams and hot sauces to fruit and veg, and there's just so much local produce that you can get on your trip.
So check out the national parks. You'll have to pay a park entrance fee, which doesn't cost very much. I think it was $7 for each of us to go in, but make sure that you pull off to pay your fee because sometimes it's not really noticeable. Like we almost drove past it one time.
Yeah, and the different parks are different prices. You just gotta make sure that you look for an entrance when you're driving in or riding in or whatever, and go and pay that entrance fee. Once you're in the park, you're basically free to do what you want. If you want to go fishing, you'll have to get separate licenses for that, but all the hiking trails are usually included in the entrance fee, and you can go rent paddle boards and kayaks and stuff in some of them, so plenty to do in all the national parks. Don't miss them.
So the weather on the east coast of Canada can change like in an instant, even if it's the summer. So when you're in Nova Scotia, even if you're visiting during the summer months from June to September, bring some warmer clothing.
Yeah, just before we arrived in July, the Nova Scotians were telling us that in June it was freezing cold and they were wearing jackets and it felt like winter. And even when we first got there, it was a little bit chilly in July. So yeah, definitely bring a rain jacket just in case it rains, and bring some warmer clothing when you go.
We lucked out because about 2 days after we arrived, it really warmed up and we had sun the whole time, which was great. But even when we were out on the water, we were cold. So we had a jacket for whale watching and stuff. So just bring a whole mix of clothing.
And our last tip for this video is just to get off track whenever you can. It's another reason to rent your own car because you'll be able to drive down all these little peninsulas that lead into these beautiful points where there's not a lot of people around, there's no cities there sometimes, and you just get these beautiful views over the ocean and you feel like you've found a new place for yourself.
And also if you give yourself some more time, you'll have a chance to go to some of the more off-track hiking trails as well. Some of the main ones that we went to, there was more people on them, but they were popular for good reason because they were beautiful. But if you have more time, you can see some of the lesser known ones as well. So in terms of accommodation, you have a lot of options in Nova Scotia. You could stay in historical boutique homes, you could stay in old hotels that are from the Victorian era, cute little Airbnbs, some beautiful beachside lodges, or you can go camping.
Yeah, if you stay in some of these lodges, you'll even get access to water sports like kayaking, stand-up paddle, pedal boats, all this kind of cool stuff that you can do. So it gives you things to do during the day when you're just hanging out at these lodges.
So definitely check out the lodges if you can, and also the other types of awesome accommodations in Nova Scotia.
So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. We just listed a few of our highlights from the trip. Of course, there's a lot more coming on this YouTube channel, on our social media accounts, and on the blog, so stay tuned for all of that.
We'll be telling you all about the best places to visit in the province, the best things to do in the province, and the top things to do in the capital of Halifax as well.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and hit the bell for notifications if you want to be notified every time we publish a new video like this. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out Nova Scotia. See you guys next time.
Bye.